We're in the TechCrunch studio today with Kevin Gao, founder and co-founder and CEO of Hyperink. Kevin, welcome to the studio.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Hyperink. I know that you guys have come out of YC, were funded last year. Just briefly sort of set up sort of how the company started and what you guys do.
Absolutely. So the journey actually started 2-3 years ago. I left McKinsey where I was consulting, and I basically wrote an ebook about the consulting recruiting process. Built a website, sold the ebook on the website. It started to do really well. And so through that process, I kind of realized that any expert that has knowledge on a nonfiction topic could do what I did, basically self-publish a book, build an audience for it, build a platform, and end up making quite a bit of money and also share all this just interesting knowledge with the world. So that was the original idea behind Hyperink, is helping experts share their knowledge through ebooks with the world. So what we do today is we have basically built a marketplace and a publishing platform. So the marketplace sells all of our books, and our publishing platform really works with experts. Like, for example, you did a book with us where essentially you have written all these blog posts over the years about startups in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it was kind of scary to see that.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, wait a minute. And so now you went in and used machines and editors, right?
Exactly.
To sort of organize all that.
Exactly. So we will basically crawl the site, and we'll figure out what posts get the most engagement, what gets shared the most, look at keyword analysis, and then we'll also have editors that go through and curate that content to make it read and feel like a book. Because for us, we just realize there's so much good content out there in the world, but it all just kind of disappears after it gets published.
Yeah.
So how do we capture that? How do we promote it with a single person? And over time, we want to do it kind of based on topics. So let's say you're raising a seed round of financing. Right. We can hopefully find the best content about seed financing from all these different bloggers.
And so this is what we were talking about, right? You can organize content around the object being the person, or organize it around a topic. You can say Middle Eastern affairs, or how to raise a bridge note or something, right?
Yeah. No, I think the future is going to be personalized books, and so you could say, hey, I want a book about seed financing for someone who is from the East Coast, not a Silicon Valley startup, but an East Coast startup. Yeah. So we can look at East Coast VCs.
I feel like with all the blogs, especially that like investors and people write, that you could almost create like an encyclopedic book on how to go through fundraising, how to get to prototype, how to actually acquire customers.
Absolutely.
Right? The information is all there, it just needs to be organized.
Absolutely. I mean, like, you take a look at Brad Feld, who's written thousands of posts, right? Or Fred Wilson or Chris Dixon. All that stuff is so amazing, but it's hard to find, it's not organized, and it's not delivered to you in sort of the fashion that you best want to consume it. So.
Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities for Hyperink. You're sort of 1 year out of YC, and let's just touch on a few of them, like let's say investor climate, what Amazon is doing, sort of how EBook Market is growing. I mean, walk us through sort of how you as a founder think about those challenges and opportunities.
Absolutely, yeah, we can take them one at a time.
Yeah, please.
So investor climate to me, so we fundamentally, I think, are a publishing business with technology that drives it.
Okay.
So what we make money from is when books sell. And so in that way, we're similar to a Random House, we're similar to a Simon & Schuster. So I think one of the things that we've learned is that as a content-driven business, when you're trying to build a startup off of that, it can be harder sometimes to get VCs interested because you're not the standard kind of mobile, social, local play, right? They don't have a direct comparison. You might not be.
The scale is different.
Exactly, exactly. And content, it's not the same. Measuring editors and writers and journalists is not the same as measuring engineers and designers and UI UX guys.
So as a founder, how do you tackle that, right? Because at a certain point, you'll come out of YC, you'll have your start fund money, and then what happens? How do you manage that as a founder if the climate coming back to you is sort of saying, no, that's not the type of scale business we're looking for?
Yeah, so I think there are two, right? Okay. So one is you have to be very clear about what your goal is. Do you want to build a $10 million business that is very comfortable for you, you have a small team, and you have total control? Or do you really want to swing for the fences? And if you want to swing for the fences, then you have to be very clear with investors about what that vision is. So even if it's content-driven, you have to think of a business that can make $1 billion in revenue, $500 million in revenue. So you have to be clear about that with yourself, with your co-founder, with your team, and with your investors. The second to me is you have to spread a wide net when you're talking to investors and figure out which ones really believe in that vision. Because even though a lot might not, some will, right? Some will see it, some will believe in it, and just because 5 people say no, it doesn't mean the 6th one will also say no.
And lucky for you, the ebook market is right? Like
Yeah.
in the infancy stage.
It definitely is. It definitely feels a little bit like the sort of rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
It's been interesting and very innovative, you know. And to touch upon your second point about Amazon,
Yeah.
you know, I think they're a fantastic company.
Yeah.
We've talked to them several times. You see all the stuff they're doing with like Kindle singles, Kindle serials now. Which
do you view them as sort of basically blazing the trail and opening this up?
So I think they are for certain things. Like it's clear that they have very strong positions in distribution, so they get the most audience. They've definitely been experimental with sort of this shorter form fiction and nonfiction.
Singles?
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So not 200 pages, but
Right.
20 to 50 pages.
Right.
So they've definitely built kind of a position in a few areas.
Yeah.
But there's so much white space, I think, and so much opportunity in this whole publishing business
Yeah.
that you don't feel like you're getting cramped out by them, I guess.
Do you think like the next J.K. Rowling type author who comes out of nowhere will actually self-publish? Or we're still a few years away from that?
So there have been a couple of examples. Yeah. So a good one is Amanda Hocking, who wrote this whole series of, I think it's like vampire lit. And she's ended up selling several million copies of her books, and this was all self-published. And so, you know, there have been examples of authors that have done that. It's hard to say if the next one that is a J.K. Rowling type will start that way, but my guess is the way the market currently is, even if they started that way, they would eventually find a traditional book deal. It's like 50 Shades of Grey. It started as sort of this online fan fiction, and once it really started to explode, all the publishers, the big traditional guys came in, threw a lot of money at that author.
So it validated.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And now she has a traditional book deal, but she has so much more leverage because she can say, hey, you know, I've already sold this many copies on my own, I've already made this much money.
Got it.
So.
Got it. And so walk us sort of at the end here a little bit. You know, you went through Y Combinator. Obviously, a lot of people look at Y Combinator with a lot of admiration, and I think it's, you know, it's deserved.
Yeah.
How was your experience going through there? And I think you were in the batch where actually the start fund was announced.
Yes.
During the batch.
Yes.
Right. So just briefly for people out there who maybe haven't talked to someone directly who's been in it, like what was it like applying, going in, and
Yeah.
sort of now being an alumni of the network?
In retrospect, the whole process was a blur, right?
Okay, right.
Because it happened so quickly.
Yeah.
The interview itself was incredibly fast and intense. The 12-week period, you were so focused on building your product and building your company that it was just a blur. But looking back on it, I mean, it was by far the biggest step we took. PG recently wrote an article about growth and how startups equal growth.
Right.
And I think in that sense, you need, as a startup, if you want to build the next Instagram or the next Facebook or the next, you know, Airbnb, you need to find those steps that make you grow tremendously quickly. And you could eventually get everything that YC gives you on your own and save some equity, but you will not do it in anywhere near that same amount of time. And so what YC really enables you to do is to accelerate that process tremendously. And of course, you know, there's the brand, there's the interaction with the partners, there's the community, all of this stuff that's, you know, it's not just something that sounds nice, it's actually been incredibly valuable for us. So.
Right. And now as an alum, how are you, I mean, you're a year removed, right?
Yes, year and a half.
And so
yeah.
just some specific things, like how did learning that you were going to have the start fund, right, once you graduated,
Yeah.
affect how you raised your seed round?
Yeah. I think ultimately it all comes down to momentum and leverage. And so once you have that $150,000 in the bank, you feel like you have some momentum because you can continue to hire people, you have more runway, you know you're not going to die overnight, right?
Okay.
The second is leverage. And so with investors, they know that they can't pressure you because you have more money, right? And that helps a lot because that enables you to find better investors, that enables you to be more selective, that enables you to be more patient. So in all, it was a tremendous win. And I think there are also startups that didn't take that money because they wanted to build something that was more organic and more profitable. And they might not have been able to do that without that 150K. So
I see. So it extends the runway too.
Exactly.
And so you can push off those discussions.
Exactly. And you get affiliated with some amazing investors and brands, Felix and DST. You've got all the SV Angel guys. And those communities are incredibly helpful. So
Great. And so any last word of advice to someone who's thinking of applying or trying to apply about, you know, let's say coming out of consulting like you did, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because people are applying now from all over the place,
Yeah,
right? I mean, they're
yeah.
coming
It's a no-brainer. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If you can go out there and within a month or two raise several $1 million from top VCs on your own, go and do it, right? Like, you are obviously at a point where you have a ton of those assets already. But if you're anybody else, I would highly recommend that you do it. And even people that have been through it and been very successful have gone back to, like, Justin,
and Stammy,
Justin Kahn, and exactly, and Paul, so.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, Kevin, congrats on launching Hyperink.
Thanks.
And we'll look to see what you guys do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
Thanks.
great.